Hello, hello, welcome. Welcome
Hi.
to the village. Welcome back to the village. If you were here before, you know what's so funny is that I kind of missed this space with you all. The last time was so like energetic. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Theresa Ruth Howard, and I am the founder and the curator of MoBBallet, Memoirs of Blacks in Ballet. And last August, in the midst of that particular madness, because we're in a new type of madness now, I thought it was really necessary to create a space for us, the community. Now, MoBBallet, obviously, Memoirs of Blacks in Ballet. We curate and lift up the experiences and the contributions of Blacks in ballet, but I wanted to create a space that centered Blackness, right? But was for everybody, where everybody's welcome. We can all speak. This is not like a platform where anyone who is not Black should feel like they have to recoil, you know, like, oh, it's not my space to say anything. Not at all. So welcome. I know that these are really, really hard times for everybody. I mean, the pandemic is just basic at this point, right? We've got, you know, snowmageddon going on. It's a really hard time. So wherever you are, like, you know, if you need to put it in the chat, we're here. This is a space for us to be together as a community. I just like to say a few words about some wonderful funders that we've been supported by this year. The Equity and Education Fund, sorry. They have been wonderful to work with and get to know, and they've been very supportive of the work. And also Howard Gilman has also supported us this year. So that's really exciting for us, because for a long time, it was really just me, Natasha, who's our digital designer, that's Natasha, and a hope and a dream. And every now and then people coming out. So luckily we have a little bit of support, and that's wonderful. We got Maddie Crawford, who is a former Ailey student of mine, who is our researcher, and she does copy editing and things like that. Patsy Gay, I don't know if she's in the house yet, but she's one of the archivists at Jacob's Pillow, and she's supporting us with research. So it's nice to have a little bit of a supportive base around us. So with that, I want to check in and check up on you, right? There was a lot going on last August. A lot of it was very confronting. A lot of it was very painful. And there was like an explosion, like a revelation, and some real some truths that came out, and they were hard, and there was a lot of pain. And we kind of like, I hope we created a space for people to really begin to learn how to talk about that, right? Because it's not easy. It's not easy on either side, right? And so I thought that that was the beginning of that. So this meeting, you know, it is Black History Month, and you know, some of us, Black history isn't just a month. I just saw this on Instagram, it's a life. But I was like, you know, maybe we should do something. You know, we do Black history, MoBBallet does Black history all the time. But I wanted to check in because there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of stuff that happened, a lot of action, activation. And I wanted to just see where people were in their work, in their journeys, what sort of projects, initiatives, affinity groups, what have you been up to? I'm going to share some of the stuff that Mob has been up to, and then we're going to open the floor. I have a couple of people who specifically wanted to share, but then if you just want to jump in, feel free. So I think the first big thing that MoBBallet did over the past like 6 months, we launched on the 1st of February, the Constellation Project. And I just want to say, whew, that was a lot. First of all, I want to give a round of applause to Natasha Hume, who it was really her her visual creation, right? She created that world, and it's a lot of work. And it came about as a partnership with Williams College. And so I want to actually start off with Janine. Janine Parker invited me to co-teach a class with her at Williams. And I told her about this crazy idea. And she said, let's go for it. And I don't know if we have any of the ladies in the house who were in that class and did the research, but if you're here, jump in. So Janine, if you could just sort of, the thing for me that was really incredible is I knew I had this thing in my head, but the way that you designed the curriculum around the site and around the project, I thought was really, really brilliant and gave the young ladies a real foundation to start with. So would you mind sharing how you came to build the curriculum that way?
Hello, everyone. I'm beyond honored that Theresa asked me to come and speak today, and over the moon that Theresa said yes when I asked if she would join me in this, and I'm getting a little teary because I really mean it, and so this is something else. Thank you, Theresa. Thank you, Natasha, for the beautiful project. I'm really teary, everyone, actually. I'm telling you. I'll take my glasses off and show you. My eyes are wet right now, so I'm going to try to hold it together. So I'll just very quickly say about how I built the syllabus. I have had some practice in the past, several 5-6 years. I've had the practice of developing courses that had both technique, physical movement, but also historic component to it. I'm sure that many of us have had the experience of having lovely students who are very, very involved in dance, but maybe haven't learned the history of their art form. And so I just took it for granted. When I was a young ballet geek, I always I grew up in Boston. I went to the public library and looked at old dance magazines and everything I could to find out about ballet history. I don't know that this happens as much anymore. So I found over the years that, again, students just didn't have that background. So I have taught a bunch of courses in which I have brought them through the history of ballet, right? So, and I've learned, and live and learn. I keep learning that it really helps to go as much as possible through the steps, through the actual literal timeline. So that was already in place for me, wrapping my head around the order of things. But with Theresa's, great help, we had to insert a lot of the history and find ways of inserting the history that seems to be magically missing. Not magical. That's a bad word because it's not magical. Interestingly missing from our dance history. So I'll stop there.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the readings and some of the viewings that you chose? Because I thought that those really helped the students to kind of begin to position the information, because they chose their subjects, right? So the people that are in the constellation were really the people that each of the students were drawn to organically, and then they made their discovering. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the tools that you use, that you incorporated?
Sure. And notice, everyone, I did try to shut up, but anyway, here I go again. So let's see. I think, Theresa, if you're asking about the tools in terms of, so the weekly assignments, which were scaled and built. We went from court ballet, right, to give them a frame of what ballet kind of looks like today, the beginnings of it. And so I chose readings from a bunch of different authors. Probably I used a reading from Susan Au's Ballet and Modern Dance. And along the way, I used a chapter from Deborah Jowett's Time in the Dancing Image. And along the way, as soon as we were in the place of history, that I could use it, then I started using Brenda Dixon Gothchild's readings, such as the one that I think we're all familiar with, the Balanchine chapter, um, stripping the emperor, and let's see. Also, each week with the assigned readings, we'd put in viewings. So viewings that corresponded to wherever we were in history. So when we were in the Romantic era, for instance, I put in the excerpt of Deborah Austin performing as the Sylph. And along the Romantic area also Dance of Harlem's Giselle, and going on from there. And it was really important to me. Theresa and I have spoken about this. First of all, for the students, for all of us, I think that, a lot of these readings, we try to find interesting readings, that will draw them in, that won't put them to sleep. But I think that being able to see, even if it's excerpts of these ballets, really helps situate us, right, in what we're talking about. It's really important to me, and it has been for a long time, but particularly with this course that we taught, that every viewing was not a viewing full of white people. And so this is sometimes hard to find ballets with, people of color in there. So that actually determined in the weekly viewing, did we see an excerpt of a ballet, or did we see the whole ballet, depending on what is available, so that's how that's a little bit more behind the scenes of some of those assignments.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that that in and of itself is like, when we're teaching ballet, whether it's history or whatever, the things that we reach for to illustrate it, right? Especially for those who don't know, right? That is their first impression. So it was really interesting that all of these young ladies now, moving forward, for them, ballet won't be whiteness, right? Because they are personally now involved with investigating and opening up the history, both for like you all and for themselves. So I really want to thank you. Go ahead.
Now I'm going to make myself talk. I will say also, in addition to the fabulous, divine Brenda Dixon, I use the writings of another very well-known writer, Miss Theresa Ruth Howard, and I have been. No, it's true. I have been using, when Theresa and I first started talking a couple of years ago, corresponding, because I had brought Theresa also to teach a guest class back in the day when we were in the studios all together. Remember that, everyone? Remember those days? When I first spoke with Theresa, I said, "Oh, I've been using your writings and your essays in my syllabi for years now," and so it was wonderful to expand my use of your writings, and also some of your really great videos that you've put together. So I am now going to shut up.
I'm gonna mute you now. Like that.
Okay, bye.
That's very uncomfortable. Like for me. Like it's okay. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward. Listen, guys, there are some really great opportunities that are happening right now. Oddly, when we're talking about people losing work and not having jobs, there are some positions that are available. If you came in early, you saw that Miami City Ballet is having an audition. Ballet Tech, y'all. Ballet Tech is looking for a new director, right? I want to encourage all of us here. If you feel like, look at and we will drop the links to these postings, because what's really important is that we have to apply. We have to apply. Even if I don't even care if you want the job, right? We need to be visible and on the radar of people, right? Because the key thing that comes up over and over again, right, is the idea is like we can't find them. We don't know where they are, right? And so let's make it an exercise to actively, like that'll be a part of our activism, is to really encourage people to apply ourselves, you know what I mean, and spread the word. It's really vital that they know, one, that we are out there, but also you become a resource for them as well. So the next time that they're looking for somebody, they can pull, right? And that we get that information and we can disseminate that through our village so that we are not invisible in those spaces, right? So with that, my friend Paul Basterling from Nashville Ballet, the artistic director of Nashville Ballet, um, has a listing that he is hiring for. So Paul, will you tell us about that, please?
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thanks, Theresa, for having me here. It's good to see everybody. We are looking for a school principal that is also is the rehearsal director for our Nashville Ballet too. But the school principal position is the sort of more important part because they're leading the ballet studies part of our program. So I would love to be able to. I guess we can post the listing up here. We have there's a search firm that is helping us with this. It's called oh shoot, uh, Management Consultant for the Arts, MCA, and who are helping us look. But I would really love if any of you guys know anybody or you're interested in the position, just check it out. And it's a really important position as we move forward with rethinking about how we teach ballet and how what the way we bring it to our community, which is a change. Nashville is a changing, growing place, and I hope you might consider it. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Does anybody have any questions about that right now? Raise your hand. And Natasha, will you help me if you see a hand raised? Because,
I just see Mike just posted it. Thank you, Mike.
okay. And there's another like special project that that Paul and I are working on. Do you want to talk? Like you say.
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll
Yeah.
say. Theresa and I have been talking about just in COVID times and how difficult it is for us to figure out how to audition and get people to audition for Nashville Ballet, but in particularly the difficulty of auditioning as a young dancer. And not only access to companies and also but knowing what the companies are like, particularly a company like Nashville, and knowing what they are, what if the fit is good. And so we've come up with this idea of trying to figure out virtual auditions, and it's almost like a pilot program where we're thinking we might be able to expand it, but right now it's going to be a collaboration with MoBBallet. And the idea is that we ask the young dancers, they have to apply, and they then will submit a variation to us, a classical variation, and we will then look at it, and the artistic staff and I will give them feedback. So the ballet masters and associate director will give feedback, and then the second stage would be teaching, having some coaching sessions with them via Zoom. So having, I had to figure out their space for them. And then a third stage would be teaching them some contemporary choreography. In between all of that is dialogue and so what's it like? Things like, what's it like to live in Nashville? What's the company life? What's the ethos of the company of Nashville Ballet? What is the, what's the vision for it long term? Those sorts of questions, so that it becomes more about us, a partnership between the dancer and the organization, as opposed to this thing that we're going to give you this, and it becomes more about a dialogue, and the dancer actually ends up having more, the artist has more agency in the choice. And hopefully, I think this is what Theresa and I were talking about mostly, and she put it in a really nice way, not a nice way, but it's they don't have to give a pound of flesh to audition, because that's sort of the worst thing is, a lot of times getting here and the stress of it all, being in a just a one class situation. And I mean, it's not great for us either to see someone in one class. It's not a great way of getting people to be with the organization. So what am I missing, Theresa?
Well, also, I think we talked about how can we make the audition process not soul breaking,
Right.
right? That you can actually come out and feel built up and go like, wow, that was an experience. Like I came out with some information that about myself, like I got feedback, but not like, you're no, not you. Like,
Right.
so the idea of the coaching is to see, how people take corrections and things like that, but also to give them an experience. On my end, I'm going to enlist some mob stars who might want to coach, look at the videos and give feedback to the dancers. So that they can feel like they're supported, right? So this is really about, yes, creating a different sort of relationship from the onset
Mhm.
with the artist and their prospective employer, right? Artistic director. What would happen if you had that sort of access to an artistic director before you were in their employ, right? Before you had to show up in the studio and be like literally on your toes. But they know you a little bit, you know them, and it establishes the ability for there to be a different level of communication. Um, it's a theory, right? So it's just a what if, right? I think we should throw everything at the wall, and then whatever sticks. We'll learn, and some things will work, some things won't. But I think overall, this is a great opportunity to try to reinvent this wheel, potentially.
Right.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts about that as an idea, as a practice? I think we said that we were going to launch it or announce it, the registration, around March 1st. So you can look for that. Is there anything? Are there any like? Are you looking for core? Does it matter like age? Like what are you looking for, Bob?
A good question. I'm looking for a soloist and core. So yeah, we've had there's lots of changeover in the company this year. I'm not sure if other companies are experiencing this, but I think the COVID, we've been working all the time, but it's been, very strange in separate studios. And I think it's really made a lot of folks decide, they want to go a different direction and in their lives, not like, not with dancing, but moving on to other things. So we do have openings with the company.
So I think there might be like you said you think there might even be up to 3
Yeah,
potentially.
that is correct. And the idea would be that through this process, we would identify folks who we think is a good fit on both sides of the equation. And then we would have them down here to, if at that point we can mix people in, we would do that. Or we would have you be in a studio, taking class with the company we're all wired up. You can take class via Zoom, and the artistic staff could then observe you. And more importantly, you'd be coming to Nashville and seeing what our facility is like, and kind of seeing what the feeling of the building is. So
Nashville's hot. I mean, not literally, but I'm saying don't sleep on it. All right.
I,
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. So look out for that and tell folks who might be interested that they need to sort of like be up on it, right? Like again, visibility. We need to make sure that we are in these spaces so that we are an actual like real presence. With that,
thank you.
is Angela in the house? Angela Harris? Is she here? I have her on my list. She didn't show up to class today. Okay, good to know. What about Jabril? Do you want to talk about what you've been up to?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to see all of your faces. I wanted to share a bit of information, things that I've been up to. One, I've got a film that I have out, canon, on my website, www.jabriljackson.com.
Can you drop the link if you want?
Ah,
Oh, you don't have to do it now. You can do it. Just
I'll
do
do
it.
it later. But yeah, it's a feature-length story ballet. Thank you, Gabby. It's a feature-length story ballet centering Black narratives, myself and Gabrielle Salvato, who's also in the meeting. And I believe it is the first of its kind, a complete story ballet that is written and directed exclusively for the big screen. And yeah, so you can check that out there. And I'm also giving a talk next Tuesday. We had to close it down because it reached capacity, but I wanted to make sure that I try and get this information out to as many people as possible. But about going back further into Europe's history to find the African origins of the form of ballet itself. And it going back to the Moors of Al-Andalus, at least, around the potentially 12th century. There's been this massive debate about the origins of the Baroque form, the saraband, which is the sarabanda. And it is one of those, yeah, we're gonna try and make a recording available for this, and we'll post it. But the sarabanda is the Spanish art form that was danced by both the North African Moors of Al-Andalus and the West African Ghanaians. And there's been debate as to whether or not it originated in the 12th century or the 16th century. And I posit that both could be true because the lineage goes from North and West Africa directly to Mexico, because Africans and West Africans were in America before Columbus got here and established connections with the indigenous people here and produced offspring, mixed blood, African-American descent that were referred to as Sambo people, Z-A-M-B-O, of mixed race and descent. And there was a playwright that talked about this dance, the sarabanda, requiring Sambo feet. So this mixed blood, but Sambo also comes from scambus, which means bandy or bowed legs. And so either everybody had rickets, where everybody's walking around with bowed legs, or everybody was rotated at the femurs and turned out. And so this dance was seen in the ports of Seville. This is the most documented place where it was seen. In the ports of Seville in the south of Spain, and was also seen in the Corpus Christi processions along with the court dances that were being performed at the period. So at the beginning of the procession, you would see the African people doing the sarabanda being portrayed as the sinful devils, et cetera, et cetera. And by the end of the procession, you would have the court dances that were being performed in the court. As we've seen with other things that were appropriated by white supremacist culture, so was the sarabanda. And then slowed down, the rotation of this bowed-legged requirement was minimized to the 90-degree rule of the Baroque, because if you exceeded that, then that was grotesque. They used it to employ grotesque and lower class people, as well as the proto-black-faced commedia character, Harlequin. So they would use this for the Harlequin, and it would be a representation of Blackness. And so it wasn't until later, after ballet was codified and started to expand further and further, that we then get the 180-degree turnout that we have now. And so, yeah, so the sarabanda, precursor to the saraband, origins, one of the at least 3 other court dances that have African roots, other being Moresca and the Chacon. And so all of these things are kind of pointing to origins that have been erased largely due to the Spanish Inquisition and to the limpieza de sangre, the purity of the blood. So burning all the documents, expelling the Moors and the Jews, and keeping any of that information from being a continuation from its origins all the way through into Europe as we know it. And everything kind of points back to that. It's more common in music studies and in architecture, where they're saying, yes, we wouldn't have the Renaissance without the Moors. We wouldn't have the architecture, the art, the instruments, the Baroque instruments, any of that, the philosophies. We have the Greeks because of the Moors. We understand math because of the Moors, algebra, algorithm, these Islamic forms that are persistent, and like the stars and the art, all of it contributes. So I wanted to make sure that I got all that out. And if there are any questions,
Yes,
you can let me know.
that's awesome. And I would really, when you're ready, I would really love to create some points on the timeline that point to that, right? Ooh, that would really take our time. Like, look, Patsy's like, yes.
Definitely.
I'm almost salivating. Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anybody want to jump in before I have a list of people? But is there anybody who wants to be just off the cuff courageous and want to add, or just want to have a comment or anything like that? You just go ahead and unmute. I think we're all Zoom conscious enough. All right, cool. Jordana, can I put you on the spot? Jordana, would you introduce yourself and tell folk what you've been up to?
Yes. So my name's Jordana Domek. I'm a first soloist with the National Ballet of Canada, originally from New York City. Sorry if you hear my baby in the background. He likes to voice a lot also. So, so lately what has been happening over the summer, seeing everything that was going on with George Floyd and all the other awful things that were happening in the States, decided to maybe host meetings with my fellow dancers and see how everyone was feeling. I brought the idea forward to Barry Houston, our executive director, who's here today. And he thought it was a wonderful idea and gave me the go-ahead, which just felt so amazing. Barry has supported me every step of the way. So I held meetings with the dancers, and it was amazing. Everyone that participated, everyone had something to say. And the thing I wanted to make sure was that it wasn't, dancers like a typical, oh, this is wrong and that's wrong, but that we actually used the space to make constructive ideas on how we wanted to make the change, so that it wasn't just upstairs that was making the change, but it was top to bottom. So it's not just Barry that has to do everything, as always. It's the whole entire organization that has to help. So that was pretty amazing. I learned a lot about how to put a document together. It was the first time using Word or whatever it was that I used. Definitely hadn't used anything like that in a while. But we got amazing things out of it. And then going forward from that, Barry asked if I would continue those conversations with the dancers and then have Theresa come along, who I have known for since your symposium, where I went down. Barry had me go down there to teach, which was an amazing experience. And I can't wait until we can do that in person again. So we have, Theresa and I were meeting. I have to say, Theresa is like my mentor, and I just love apprenticing with her. That's what I like to say. I'm her apprentice. And we decided, Theresa came up with this amazing idea to create an affinity group. So my favorites, Theresa, she has like amazing lines as always. So activating your activism. So that's what, we led with. And I just said, whoever wants to join, come on in, but it's not, again, just a place where you're just going to be complaining. We're actually doing work to help our company. So we've had a few meetings so far, and it's been amazing. Theresa's teaching us so much history, understanding how things work, and then just putting forth ideas. Like she said, we're just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what can happen, what can work. We're still working on some things that we're going to be presenting to the company, some ideas. As always, I feel, I heart Barry, that we can always just have conversations and be able to sit at the table. I feel really blessed to be in the company that I'm in, to be able to have these conversations and not be afraid to. And then just with Theresa, creating all of this change has been absolutely amazing. And I'm learning so much.
And can you talk a little bit about, like, I don't know if it's too soon, but like about the social media like thing that's
Yeah.
bubbling?
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
So one of our members, what's John Hart's actual title, his job title? I feel so awful.
Development communications.
Thank you. So John Hart has put together a book list that our company that like everyone has read in the company, and he wanted to post it on our social media just to show like what kind of books on diversity and inclusion that we've been reading. So Theresa and Ashley, who works in our development, also got together, and we were talking about different ways that we could present it and use the affinity group to present that. So the affinity group thought of, like not just books, but like, what are we watching? What are we listening to? Anything that can be brought forward and shown, just what we're doing to educate ourselves, how it's involved in the arts as well. And that maybe we could have like a highlight on the National Ballet Instagram page and see like if we could post those things there once like, it's approved and looks pretty with photos and everything like that. So that's our first step. And then in the affinity group, because we actually have quite a large number of people, we kind of thought it would be cool if we had little groups of people to handle certain things. So if you like social media, like you could be on the social media team, or if you want to talk about classical ballet and like come up with cool ideas, like you can be in that group, so that, everyone feels comfortable, because not everyone is going to be comfortable to speak about something. So if you can find your niche and be able to really just explore and have fun in these conversations, that's the space we're trying to create.
And the other piece of that was, the ballet is trying to figure out, okay, it's Black History Month. What's our presence going to be? And the dancers are kind of like, well, what do we want to say? Right. And so it was like, okay, well, let this be an experiment. How would you want to show up? And so now there's this interesting conversation that is going to hopefully end up with this really authentic, social media, I don't even want to call it a campaign, that is going to be continuous, that the dancers have ownership of, that they feel like it represents them and it represents the company. Like, so it feels like it is collaborative. And that's the exercise, right? Is can the okay, I don't know if you've read the representation and tokenism article that's going around, but like, can it be real representation? And what does that look like? And so I think that that's really cool. Barry, do you want to say anything in particular?
First of all,
You don't have to.
I'll just say good morning to everyone. I hope everyone's taking good care. It's been a really long year. And just to give you a sense of what's happening in Canada right now, in Toronto, we're still in full lockdown. And I think in the beginning of the crisis, we made a commitment to doing everything we could to protect people first. And so the dancers and orchestra and all of our full-time staff have never been off payroll through the crisis. They've all accepted wage reductions, but we've been able to keep everybody going, which is sadly not the case with a lot of our peer institutions. So it's been a point of privilege for us to be able to sort of keep it together. And then we've also made the commitment to keeping all of the dancers that are in the company. We have about 72 dancers right now on contract, keeping them all, renewing all of those contracts into next year, including in cooperation with our union, allowing second year apprentices to have sort of a gap year with us, because there's so few jobs to audition for. Our apprentice program is a 2-year program. So those second year apprentices will have a third year offered for next year. Sadly, I don't think we're going to have any jobs open in the dancer ranks. It appears most everybody is going to stay with us. So there's not a lot of opportunity in the short term, but but we're keeping it together. And I'm just thinking of all of you and you know, Jordana, it's my turn to have wet eyes. Jordana came to me months ago and just said, I just want to be part of the solution. And I'm very proud of her and grateful for all the work that she's doing. And then Theresa, just to give you a broader sense of the work at National Ballet, we work with an organization called Cultural Pluralism in the Arts Movement Ontario, who's been for the last 3 years working with us on all of this work and helping to facilitate it from a Canadian perspective. And Theresa, Teresa's a dear colleague and friend, and I asked her if she would join us on this journey. And really, her work has been focused on the artistic side of the shop and cracking open, not only co-facilitating these ongoing meetings with the dancers, but also she's been doing anti-bias training with the artistic staff and really talking about casting and repertoire and promotions and, you know, getting into some of those conversations with the artistic staff within the organization. She launched our speaker series yesterday and gave her History of Blacks in Ballet presentation, which I'm still getting emails. We had about 135 people on Zoom hearing that presentation yesterday. We had board members, we had staff, we had dancers, we had orchestra members, we had donors, and we had invited guests from the Canadian ballet community. It's a really beautiful way to launch that series. So just a lot happening.
Frenchie has a question.
Sure.
Can you share what solutions this work has brought about? Do you feel like you're at a solution place? Yeah.
Are we at a solution? I think Theresa, you and I both know it's a process. So there's a lot of, I think what we're trying to do is make sure that we are focused on not getting stuck in sort of an institutional way in the idea that it's all about the planning. And there has to be sort of accountability as we continue the journey, and we have to celebrate sort of advancements as they happen. I think obviously the kinds of conversations, and I know Crystal, I think, is on the call, who's our associate artistic director, the kinds of conversations that the artistic staff is having with Theresa, I think they've had 2 meetings so far. Is that right?
Yeah.
They're really, you know, I'm not part of those conversations, but my understanding is that they have been sort of open and raw and good in their sort of transparency, and they are going to lead to change. I mean, to give you an example, we're building a brand new Swan Lake, which was supposed to premiere last June, and there are already being redesigns done on certain costumes that are coming out of Karen's learning, her own learnings about this work, and she's making choices as the artistic director and as the director of that production to have the designer make some changes. So like that's an actionable thing that's actually happening. We commissioned 7 works by choreographers during the pandemic to make digital works. And we hired 4 BIPOC choreographers that we have never commissioned before. You may know some of them: Jennifer Archibald, who's at Cincinnati Ballet; Vanessa Montoya, who's at Le Grand Ballet Canadien; Kevin Ormsby, who has a company called Cache Dance in Toronto; and Jara Wolf, who is a choreographer and dancer with Red Sky, which is an indigenous contemporary dance company. So that's actionable. That's something we did, and those folks are getting work during the pandemic. So
can I add, can I add the dancers, the affinity group, is Ben on here or Harrison? Have created, they've taken on this process of like opening up Swan Lake, right? Like really looking at it and historically, and what are the things that could shift and could change. So they're having these conversations, and you know, who knows what comes out of them. But I think that the dancers themselves just having a certain amount of agency. Harrison, do you want to, Harrison, Ben, do you want to say anything about what the work is in terms of like a possible reimagining or what have you?
Yeah, I kind of headed up the project a little bit and got the dancers involved, and I just wanted to hear, like, as a collective, as dancers, what do we find problematic about Swan Lake? What would we like to see changed? And we got so much information. And then a couple of days ago, just what, 3 or 4 of us, sorry, our dog, we sat down, and I thought it was going to be like a kind of half-hour meeting. And then 2 hours later, we had gone on this kind of, we'd hopped off the Swan Lake train altogether, and had just really fascinating discussions. But to bring it back to Swan Lake, it was like I think there's the hot topic issues of like white and black swan and what that says to people and how that makes people feel, and how because we're doing a new Swan Lake soon, what are the changes that we can actually implement in a new Swan Lake when costume set design has already been well underway? What are small things that we could change that reject some of the historical problems from that time, and yeah, make a statement, as National Ballet of Canada, like, this is who we are. We want to say these things through this ballet.
And I think it was really nice too that Theresa invited us to imagine like the possibilities, like what could be in a classical ballet, and what sort of things would we want to see. And I think that is definitely a new thing, especially coming from the dancers, and whether changes that we suggest are implemented, it's nice to get that conversation going and to have some of those ideas flowing too, like in both directions, sort of like from the dancers and from the staff.
Thank you. Princess Latoya Princess. You want to jump in and with a historian.
Just really briefly, because I just want to say I'm so glad that someone is finally addressing Swan Lake, because I've been working with Theresa. My research at Harvard was called Black Swans, Shattering the Glass Ceiling. And I wrote my thesis particularly choosing that title because of Swan Lake and the entire implications of the Black Swan and all of those things. So I'm very, very excited to see that you all are tackling that idea. And I would love to talk more even about my perspective of why or how I feel about the Black Swan, the character itself, and the implications that has in the ballet world when you're talking about even Blackness in ballet. So
awesome. Antoine, we're moving forward. Y'all, I have this in my mind. This is like we're at church and this is the announcements period, where we're like, let's hear from Antoine. He has Antoine.
I love it.
At the podium.
Thank you, Theresa, so much for creating this space. And it's so great to see some familiar and unfamiliar faces on this call. My name is Antoine Byers. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm currently zooming in today from the stolen Lenape-Hoking land, which most of us know as Manhattan, New York. And I'm the founder and CEO of Black Dance Changemakers, which I'm really excited to share with you guys today. So Black Dance Changemakers is a social platform designed to unite and uplift Black identifying dancers through leadership, education, service, and community building. We offer a safe, resourceful community for Black dancers around the world to connect with each other. So that's our mission, and I'm gonna drop some stuff in the chat if you wanna follow our work. But basically, on June 1st, which is, hashtag the show must be paused, Blackout Tuesday, I felt a lot of energy from the world and the community to be silent and to be quiet around the issues that were happening to our community as Black folks. So basically I reached out to everybody I could think of, all the Black dancers I could think of in my phone. And we started weekly Zoom calls just to talk about what was on our mind, what was coming up for us with everything that was happening around us. And we did that every week all the way from June until September. And then from that point, I had 2 issues. I wanted to open this up out of the contact list in my phone, because I knew that wasn't all the Black dancers that exist on the planet. And then I wanted to create something that could live on outside of just me. right? So it isn't just dependent on me and my Zoom Pro account. So from there, we created, and by we, I have an incredible team that I work with, 4 beautiful and brilliant Black dancers, Tamisha Guy, Alicia Johnson, Fauna Tesfa-Georgis, and Alicia Peak, have helped me create Black Dance Changemakers. And it's basically an app. We have a web platform and a mobile platform, and we offer between 10 and 15 events each month, specifically around the interests, desires, wants, and needs of Black dancers. So some of our events that we offer, we have kind of our keynote presentation, but we prefer conversations versus keynotes. Usually with keynotes, there's one person at the front and 1,000 people in the back, but we wanted to kind of break down that wall and create space for conversation. So we invite folks who we consider to be industry leaders in to have conversations with our members. We have 4 clubs within our membership right now. We have our Fit Connection, which is a fitness club. We have the Turning Page, which is our book club. We have Curl Friends, which is a club all about Black hair and navigating Black hair within the dance field. And we also have, which one am I forgetting? Oh, Vibe Tribe, which is our music club. So talking about music and how it connects with us as Black dancers. We also, have a community curated playlist in that group that a lot of us use for improv classes, but also just, walking around on the street. Let's see, I made some notes because I always forget some stuff. Let's see. We also have several different events throughout the month outside of those clubs. So we have watch parties. We're actually having one tonight where we're watching Self-Made, the story of Madam C.J. Walker with our Curl Friends group, and we're going to examine that docudrama to see how it relates to what really happened, see how it relates to some of the experiences we have in the dance world. We also had a wine tasting a few nights ago. Yeah, we have lots of different events. I like to describe Changemakers. Everybody has dance classes online right now. If you want to take a dance class, I can send you like 50 that you can take right now via Zoom. But we're trying to fill that gap, kind of the hallway conversations, right? After class, if we want to go grab a drink, grab a snack. After the show, what did you think about that performance, right? Bridging that gap, the connection that a lot of us as dancers, and specifically Black dancers, that's the connection that we're missing in this moment right now. So that's what Black Dance Changemakers was created to fill. And what Changemakers is specifically is not only an internal change. So through our programming, we're trying to transform our Black community so that we can transform the world around us. But we also have actionable things that we try to do to literally change the community around us. So in the fall, we had a food drive where we collected over 300 food items to donate with Feeding America. In January, we just finished a clothing drive where we collected over 100 different items that we donated with American Red Cross. And we have some very exciting drives coming up very soon. But this is basically the skinny on Changemakers. I feel like I've covered everything. If you have any questions, absolutely ask me right now. But you can also find more information at blackdancechangemakers.com. And please share this with any dancers who you think might need this app. I always say that, if you're the only Black dancer in a company, depending on where you're at, you might be the only Black dancer in that city, the only Black professional dancer in that county. So it's really important for us to create space for community. And we've created a digital platform to where you can connect with dancers everywhere. So we have folks in the States, folks outside of the States. We really are creating a space for everybody. So yeah, hit me up if you have any questions. And if you have any questions now, I can also answer. But thank you again for the space.
Well, amen, brother Byers. Yes, let the church say amen. That was perfect. That was like perfect. I dropped the Baptist church just at the right time because that was everything. That's really, really wonderful. Let's lift that. Let's pass that around because that is really creating this sense of community and sense of healing, and that's especially now where everybody is so isolated. So yes, Black hair curl friends. Yes, I'm here for that. And I think this is a good segue because there's a Clara, do you want to jump in and talk about amplified voices? Because that's also a sort of support, you know, a group and gathering and doing that sort of work. Where you at, girl?
Hey. Hi, I'm Claire Superfine. I'm coming in from Amsterdam. I'm with the Dutch National Ballet. And so this summer, I became inspired by exactly all the things that I'm seeing on this screen, which are people speaking up and raising their voices and coming out with projects and initiatives all around the world. And I found that this was some sort of autonomy, a new voice and space that was allowing dancers to come into their own and raise their voices. So this inspired me to start reaching out to people and connecting with dancers on a global scale and believing that we could unite and elevate the dance world together. So Dancers Amplified is seeking to empower and center marginalized voices to be able to be part of the change, exactly like Jordana has said, and to be advocates within our institutions and ignite that activist nature that's within all of us. So we're hoping to provide resources, a platform for dancers to communicate on a networking scale and a forum so that we can help to educate each other and raise awareness within the dance community. We'll be launching soon with this networking platform on a membership basis so that initiatives can communicate with each other, find ways of collaborating, as well as gathering and revising all of this knowledge into a form of a document that we can then present on a global scale in which best practices and methods of action can be taken to our institutions and the companies that we work for. And I also would like to say that what I'm seeing at National Ballet of Canada is so beautiful and such a wonderful example of like a collaborative nature and culture. And I hope that we can see this within other organizations and companies. I know that not all dancers feel this way at their companies. And so we hope to follow in suit with this kind of place. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I love to, and for my artistic and any executive directors who were Equity Project folk, the whole concept of the dancers not in those moments being active participants in the work was, I think, one of the greatest, can I say, it was a shortcoming, right? In what we were trying to accomplish, and the idea of bringing in these dancers and because they're the leaders of tomorrow, right? And so they're actually in the experience in a way that, you know, in that organizational logo way, we're just not. And so it's really inspiring to see that dancers are taking their own agency, like just outside of their organizations, but also inside. And that I think it's really, really a great place to hear that inside organizations, that there's a learning about like, that those voices don't have to be adversarial inside, that we're all actually working toward the same goal, you know, and if that's what can evolve and develop, then I think that culturally the shift that specifically ballet needs to make will aid all of the other stuff, right? Like it will change the lens so that when you say, oh, what's not represented here? Whose story is not being told? Who do we need to get to tell this story? You know what I'm saying? Like those are the things that, for me, I'm like, yeah, we can do all these training, but we as people just need to be different, right? If everybody in the room is different and is looking through a very specific type of lens that sees the spectrum, then organically stuff, I think, will start to shift and change. I mean, that's just a theory. Disrupt power, yes. Sarah, do you want to tell us what you're up to?
So I have been doing a lot of writing and thinking on this topic. You can see behind me here, I've got a lot of ideas going. And as I'm shifting from, a focus on performing into focusing on writing about dance, being in the dance space in a different way, there's a lot of advocacy that comes into play on many different levels with cultural and aesthetic shifts that are emerging from us, the younger subset, the upcoming generation, as Theresa mentioned. And I think writing is a really great platform to bring people in a different way, from like just what you're seeing on stage or what you're seeing on other platforms, long form writing, much like, Theresa does a lot of that as well. So contributing to the conversation from many different perspectives, I think can help open up this world and bring more social relevance into what dance is and its importance in the world. And in that way, elevate the status of dance and dancers and ballet in the world to be something that is of consequence to our society in general and reflects our society too in really meaningful ways. So right now I'm writing with Amy Cyworks Imagery, a contemporary ballet company that's based in San Francisco. I worked with Amy for many years, and it was over the summer that we began discussions a little bit. And then in the fall, I came on as writer in residence, and I'm writing on the blogs there. I'll drop a link in the chat to the blog, writing pieces about race, about gender, body image, all kinds of different conversations opening up in sort of serial format, in addition to interviews and contextualization of the work that Imagery is doing. So I look forward to engaging in more conversation through this platform and through other ones too. So thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, here's what I think is really, I just feel energetically, this space is vastly different from where we were in August. And I think it's really, I like to hear what's happening and hear what's going on. And I want all of us to be able to connect and jump on and share ideas, because as you are working in your various spaces, we hear about like best practices. Like we have to share ideas. We have to be able to, like, sometimes it's not in our head or in our space. But when we hear an idea, for instance, like, oh, the dancers are talking to the marketing department about creating campaigns, like that's something to try. It may not work in your organization, right? Or it may not work yet. But the idea that you are constantly sort of figuring out the way to bring new ideas to the table and ask people, right? Like gently, like sometimes gently, sometimes like more forcibly, but like gently provide possibilities of like, is there another way? Like, could we try? Have we thought about this? I find a lot of times it's less overt resistance and more like we've just never done that before, or we haven't thought about that before, right? So for me, I don't automatically jump to oh, they don't want to do it. Like I don't automatically jump to that. Like I pause for a second and go, is this a fear of the unknown? Like I don't know it, like the personal ego, I don't know. Or is it something else? Like stepping through what could be the possible reasons why this is not a possibility. Or maybe it's about gaining trust, right? There's all these different things. I think that communication is really a key factor, and learning how to talk across the boundaries that exist in these organizations. And there are boundaries like this way, and there's boundaries like this way, right? And I think that I think we're starting to imagine, I think with that explosion that happened with BLM and like dancers going like, not anymore, rising up, that shifted, like the conversations that were had then, I feel like we can't roll back. right? Like you can't not hear people anymore. It's just not, it ain't gonna go down that way. Dada Masilo's Swan Lake, reimagining the ballet through a South African lens. Oh my God, I swear it was one of the best things I've ever seen. Did anybody see the Dada Masilo's Swan Lake? You should really check it out, because what she, we're back on Swan Lake, but what she did was she set it in South Africa, in a South African village. She did not use the classical music. It was the story of Giselle, literally reimagined, right? Culturally reimagined, right? So like what Dancing of Harlem does is it sets it in Louisiana, where we can imagine that same story, like literally that same story, with people that are brown, right? Like it makes sense, right? For those people to be in those stories, in that story. She kind of like flipped it upside down. And it was really incredible. Any thoughts, comments, concerns?
Hi, Theresa. Hi,
Hey.
this is Alicia from Boston Ballet. Just very quickly, like when it comes to the artistic conversation, it was hugely important for us to use dialogues as an intervention. And for me as a leader of our community engagement work, to really begin to have meaningful conversations with our artistic department. Like it's important that I talk to Miko and Max on a regular basis so that they really know what's going on in community engagement, but also how does community engagement inform what we're choosing as an organization artistically? And not just in a place of people are voting with their feet when it comes to the opera house, but what does it mean when our music department is choosing their repertoire? How does community inform that space? And that's what I meant by that comment of disrupting power structures. In that way of conversation, in that way of relationship, things have to begin to change. We have to do a paradigm shift. In those spaces, I talk a lot about business model as well, because we're in a time where unless you want to close, you better figure it out real quick. That's just the time that we're in. So I don't need everybody in my organization to get woke. I just need us to think about how we do this work differently and have different kind of conversations and change who we see as experts,
Yes.
what we value as expertise, and how we pay that, and being mindful of how much trauma we're reenacting by asking marginalized communities to retell stories over and over again. Now it's our job to start to do this differently.
Amen. Let the church say amen. The other piece I'll add to that is I've begun to realize that, people are adaptable. So I want us to get rid of the cookie for having a difficult conversation. Okay? Because they're not difficult anymore. I mean, they're difficult, but the idea of, we had some difficult conversations and no, we know that that's a part of it. And so we have to, we in this work have to demand more, right? Yes, they're necessary. Yes, they're difficult, but that's just baseline. Like, that's a given, right? So at one point it might have been shocking, but if you have a DEI consultant, right? Like if you've taken a training, if you've done X, Y, and Z, then already that sort of seal is broken. And so I think it's really, we have to demand more. We have to keep lifting the bar, because that's where that sort of level of complacency rides, right? So we go like, oh, well, we've done that. And I'm not saying that's everywhere. I'm just saying we have to be mindful that is a mechanism. How is, Alicia, how do you feel Do you feel like there is a shift? Like obviously it is the practice, right, of normalizing this. How do you feel like it's going for you?
I mean, personally, I feel like it's going great, but I'm also an ex-football player, D-line all day, so I'm here to disrupt. So the other bonus is I've also been a part of this organization for almost 20 years. Like I was a part of education and community initiatives before it had a name and a place. So we've always been an outlier. So to the point that's often raised in this work, is it slow? Absolutely, because it's been almost 20 years and we're just starting to make traction in some areas. But there are places where we're getting it together and we're trying to call each other out. So I feel encouraged by the consistent traction, right? To your point, it's past just using dialogues as an intervention now.
Yeah.
Now everyone is being asked from their department, from their purview, from their sphere of influence, what you control, to do your part. So what is your part? What is my department's part? What are my instructional coach's part? To, you know, how are we curating things? We just watched Princess's footage this past week again. It's a part of our onboarding. It has to become muscle practice so that it's not a one-off, because I don't want to just be popular in February and March and in June because I'm a Black gay unicorn. Like, I'm not here for that either. So, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that I found really common is that the people of color in organizations generally pull around that community engagement area, and like the HR, like you know, like you have a person of color in HR, and then you have like the community engagement. And the thing that I found interesting is with the community engagement, that's often offsite, right? Like those people oftentimes aren't in the building. They're in the community. They're in the communities that you say that you're engaging in, and yet you're not even really engaging with the people who are doing the engagement.
Right. And not for nothing, Theresa, we listened to you, right? Your piece about ballet is the top of the triangle. So it doesn't look in on itself. So what we're starting to do is have conversations and build programming around how do other dance forms inform ballet, and bringing that into our actual studio. And not just for my community kids, but for our company, for our summer dance program kids, for our pre-pro. Like, how do all these other dance forms inform your lived experience and your practice? Because we understand that you had a life before you came into Boston Ballet.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say, bring those people into the building. They're your greatest resource. They know who, like, I ask people, like, what do you mean by community? Who's in your community? They're like, right? Like, you don't really know, right? You have an idea, it's a demographic, but they're not human. So the people who are out in the community, bring them into the building and have conversations. They should be at those tables. They can tell you exactly what's happening in those communities, what those communities need, what they might respond to, right? They can inform your programming. Like what you are developing can be based on something that is like factual, right? And pay them. Will better connect, right?
And pay them. If you're asking people to come in, especially their parents, and you might want to think about getting childcare and a pizza. Or think about the time of day when you're doing it so that parents aren't working. You know, again, what you're valuing as expertise, like for us in Boston, you know, even in my mind for my department, I have to justify why I would pay someone for Harvard or from MIT, and I wouldn't pay a parent advisor for similar information. And that's the equity conversation to me.
Very good. Very good point. Good point. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Jump off of that? Oh, you know, Christopher, did you did you want to say something about the work you've been doing, or no? You don't have to. But now I called you out. Brother Christopher. Oh.
Are you talking to me?
Sorry. No. My friend Christopher Renford. No? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hi, hi everyone.
Wait, first of all, I knew Christopher from the Ailey School, and we used to just like hang out in the PT room and just cut up. And he's the most delightful, sweetest young man. Go ahead. Tell us what you're up to.
Oh, thank you so much, Theresa. Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Renfirm. I am from the Netherlands. I am in Rotterdam right now. Thank you so much, Theresa, for having me. And it's just such an honor and a privilege to be mentored by you and get all the advice and the support that we're getting from you, because it's just incredible. Hearing everyone's stories and all the work that everyone has been up to is just so inspiring. And well, I'm coming from a contemporary ballet background, and later on in my career, I decided to actually start in the cabaret world. And I am a dancer with Lido de Paris in France right now. And similar to some of the other dancers, I also started questioning the company and asking these tough questions, and said, why is there not enough diversity in the company? A very amazing colleague of mine, Hilary Sukanos, and I started a platform called Cabaret Diversity Network. And our mission is to nurse, celebrate, and support the legacy of diversity on the stages of cabaret. We are an informative platform creating awareness, collecting, showcasing history and education. We are built to provide diversity casting solutions, connect diverse dancers with companies, expand and continue representation of diverse dancers on cabaret stages. We have had the privilege to reach dancers, teachers, and companies with different ethnic backgrounds from all over the world. For example, from India, Brazil, the United States, England, Holland, and France. We hope to continue this by growing our circle and working with more dancers, teachers, schools, and companies. We see a future where diversity matters on the stages worldwide, and believe it's important to have conversations with dancers and leadership. The world is changing fast, and we're all part of the present and future. So let's make the cabaret world more inclusive together. And I think the work that everyone is doing in the ballet world is just so important, because most of the dancers that do come into the world and are introduced to the world of cabaret, they're coming from a ballet background, and having more awareness and the history of all those beautiful, diverse talents in the ballet world, and that are also still growing and coming, because this is something that hopefully in the future we're gonna have more Misty Copelands, and we're gonna have more. There's so many incredibly talented ballet dancers that a lot of dancers are actually not even familiar with. So it's amazing to have these platforms that bring these dancers together, and that we have conversations, because its visibility is so important. So I just wanted to share this, because just like in the ballet world, a lot of other dance forms, we're all suffering from the same thing. The cabaret world is very white, and we need to, change has to come. Like, something has to happen now. And Theresa, thank you so much for helping us, because hopefully with your guidance and your help and support, it is gonna happen. We have had the privilege to actually start talking with the company that we're working with, Hilary Sukanos and I. We started Lido Humanity, and we have actually had the privilege to actually start having those conversations with direction, and they are very receptive. It took a while, because they said that it was not an issue that was that concerned France. It was something that was happening in America. The BLM movement that inspired us was something that wasn't really relevant in France. Well, we had to show them that it was, and with a lot of hard work, we managed to actually start turning those wheels, and they are finally listening, and hopefully change is gonna come.
That is so incredibly exciting. And I can only imagine that what is happening now at the Paris Opera, right, will only support the work, right? Because now they can't pretend like it's something that's in your head. So it's come to their doorstep too. So congratulations, I'm so happy for you, you guys. I know it was like, you know, Hillary, do you want to?
I just want to jump in. One, thank you, Theresa, and one, thank you, Christopher. So a little bit of the action items. So there's Lido Humanity, which is a self-organized group within the Lido de Paris. The Lido de Paris is one of the largest cabarets functioning in Europe and world famous. It's similar to the Moulin Rouge. So we're talking with management, and the action items there is one, to get diversity, equity, and inclusion training, hopefully with Theresa plugged into the company. So that is, they've asked us for a list of demands. The second part is that as casting. So like what was touched on here, casting of companies is 3 to 5 years out for growth. So this is when the work we do now is we're going to see the results. So we have initiatives we're introducing to the company so that when they are at the point to hire dancers, they'll be known that they need to be focused and that this is on the table. And the company is very corporate, so what's happening at Paris Opera and in Germany, they like to ignore. So that's that. And Christopher and I, we founded an exterior group called Cabaret Diversity Network. I dropped the link. We are just Instagram right now. We are building a website soon. It's very exciting. So this is when us in Europe, I'm American, but I live in Bonjour from Paris. We want to connect to you in this network because there are dancers who go into Broadway, West End, Rockettes, the cabaret world, which suffers the same ills, the same invisibility, as you said, Frenchie. So Cabaret Network, we're giving visibility and a platform. We have 2 featured articles. I encourage you, I'd like some feedback. We interviewed the Rockettes of Color, ROCA, the Rockettes of Color alumni, and also featuring some great dancers from Crazy Horse who have a beautifully diverse cast. So, and action items with them is, again, building a casting resource and having conversations in the world of cabaret. So thank you all. It's inspiring to hear you and hope to continue to connect with you and be inspired by your work.
Yes, this is exciting. Mike, do you want to go?
Well, I was born a Francophone. I don't speak French as well anymore. So, but when you are a Caribbean Francophone, you still have some understanding of like the rigidity of French culture. I tell people that I had to learn how to be an American. I'm American born, but my parents are Haitian, Cuban, Dominican. So like our pop culture references were French or Spanish. Sometimes I meet people from France and they're like undiluted French. So I understand and have a relationship with French cultural institutions in that way of coming from that diaspora and post-colonial experience. So I want to uplift the work that I hear that you guys are doing. The other thing that I want to uplift is my squad mate, Sarah Celia Bukowski. We are a very communal people, and I just joined the board of Amy Seiwert Imagery. So now I'm watching her work and seeing that evolve. And I joined the board this month. So I'm new to being on the board of a ballet company. And she's there, and I heard her make her presentation, but again, I want to uplift this notion of writing as another way into the work. The fact that the company decided to have a writer in residence was at a ballet company was novel to me, and I guess I'm another Black person on a ballet board now, so that's it.
And to that point, I think we have some board members on this in this town hall. I want to really encourage you to get into your organizations, right? Like get into your organizations about this work. Like educate yourselves as I created a a curriculum called Embodying Idea because I felt like a lot of the consulting that was happening in ballet companies wasn't addressing the culture. Like it didn't permeate the actual ballet culture. And so I like to solve problems. So I was like, how do we do this? How do we normalize this work? How do we make this an everyday practice? And so I have a couple of courageous companies who are walking the path with me where we are learning the DEI, but it specifically connected to the ballet culture and pulling it apart and then figuring out how we in the organization can apply those things that we learned together, right? So that's that communication sort of thing. So like hopefully, like, you know, if you have, you know, the dancers over here talking and you have the artistic staff over here talking, they eventually can come like this and they're speaking the same language and they've learned how to listen to one another, right? They understand that. But I think the board needs to be in that process as well, right? As a supporter to everybody in the organization, but specifically to your leaders. You know, like if you, one of the things starting out in the work, we would always say, well, the board is the problem. The board is the problem. And then you start to hear, well, the board is with us. Well, the board is with us. And then you're like, well, if the board is with you and y'all are with it, then why is it not happening? Right? So there's something that's not connecting. And so I think that this idea, the way that we're siloed, the way that it works isn't working for this. If we want to transform this culture, we want to transform these organizations, then we can't do it the same way. So educating board members, educating themselves, one, really about the art and really about the culture of the art, not just the business of the art, right? Those are different things. And then getting into the learning with the organization so that you are now actually speaking the same language, right? So it's not just like I'm hearing a report out and that makes sense for the things that we have on this thing here, that these two things have to match. This is human work and you have to be connected to it, right? You have to be educated you have to educate your eyes to say like, huh, that doesn't look right, right? And this is my theory, that everybody should be able to make that call or raise that question. Should we be thinking about this? You know what I mean? Is that really does that align with what we say we're supposed to be doing? Right? So it's all hands on deck. It can't just be, because then we don't have that feeling of like, oh, now I've got to go to the board and convince them that this is the way that we want to go. You need to learn how to talk to one another so that you can understand vision, purpose, right? Like that's I think when we start to shift things really, where we start to actually mix it up and everybody is actually on the same page. Okay, that's enough of me. Thoughts, questions? If there are any board members on here, not to call you out, but like if there are any board members that want to jump in or have a question or a thought about that, happy to hear you. And or not. Anyone else? Thoughts, feelings, experiences?
I have an experience with the board.
Here's
thanks for creating this space, Theresa. It's great to see so many familiar faces. I didn't say anything with community engagement. I kept my mouth shut. I have a lot to say, but I wanted to say with the board, my experience has been the board doesn't really know what's going on. And even though the board is at the top of the hierarchy of a ballet organization, oftentimes the role of people in the organization are to share the board the best news and the best delivery and reporting the wonderful things that are occurring. And unless there's a financial pitfall, oftentimes the board is not understanding, like you said, the culture. The board doesn't understand what's going on day to day, both administratively in any departments with specific dancers. And also as individuals, many dancers don't feel like they have that deep connection with board members or have the opportunity to share how they are really feeling. And so I feel like that disconnect with this board being seen over here and not having those real interactions and conversations and connections really upholds that issue.
Thank you. Oh, did you also want to, you're having an event, aren't you?
Well, yes, I am.
Would you like to tell us about it?
Yes, I left Joffrey in February of 2020 after 20 years there, and I started my own consulting firm, Cultivating Better Tomorrows. We provide diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting for the performing arts. And so on April 11th, we're hosting our first summit. And we are going to be experiencing joy, building community, and reimagining what diversity, equity, and inclusion can be for the performing arts. So we'd love to have you there. Please join us.
Do you drop the link as well?
Yes, I will drop our website into the chat. Thanks.
Well, this is just exciting, people. This is the best church service I've been to in a while. It's almost like a Quaker service where you like sit quietly and then the spirit moves you and then you stand up and speak and then you just sit down. Anyone else want to share or have thoughts about where we are or what's going on?
You can speak up, Theresa.
Please.
Hey, it's
Hey,
Leland. Hi, everybody. I'm Leland Simmons. I'm the chair of dance at the Harlem School of the Arts. We're based in New York City, and we service kids ages 2 through 17 in music, dance, visual arts, and whatnot. So, you know, for me, I've been in this position, very unique position as a male Black ballet dance educator. You know, there's not a lot of us, but we're here. And I will say for me over the last year, you know, I've been doing that work, servicing young people, servicing underprivileged, you know, young people, especially when it comes to Black and brown children from poor communities, right? That's the work I've been doing. Though it hasn't been as extremely visible, I've been doing that work and at our school establishing relationships with programs like American Ballet Theater, the Radio City Rockettes, you know, helping our students get to these high-level arts institutions and ballet programs. You know, for me, over the last year, it's been like a whirlwind as I've now been getting opportunities that, you know, it's like I've been here, but I'm being asked to now teach here, and I'm a visiting chair at the School of American Ballet and a adjunct instructor at NYU. Like all of these opportunities have been really, really beautiful, but I just continue to question how authentic these things are and how oftentimes for me, it just seems like performative art. You know, and I know that a lot of these processes take time. You know, I've been a part of the School of American Ballet's Board of Diversity and Inclusion for about 5 or 6 years now. And since the beginning, I've said, you guys need a Black ballet teacher there. You need a woman. You need a woman. It finally took this last year to now, you know, them bringing in a woman, right? So, and I think it's wonderful, but for me, I just feel that I have my reservations with some of the things that I continue to see. And I know that it's a slow process, I get it, but for me, it's a little too slow. For me, it's a little too slow. You know, it needs to pick up the pace. And I'm sorry that I may be saying that and whatnot, but it's just my feelings. You know, I sit in those board meetings or those diversity meetings and I say, you know, I say this is wonderful work and I see the transformation that's happening here in the school, but what's happening in the company, right? Because for me, you know, many Black women have not fared well in particular institutions, right? So all of this diversity and me bringing you students is wonderful. And I know this is great, but what's really going on the inside of your company? And will we see Black women being elevated? Because it's too late. You're late. So that's all I have to share. And thank you so much, Theresa, for having me and the work that you are doing. Kudos to you. And yeah.
No, that's a real thing. And in fact, I'm not going to put him on the spot, but Jason Ambrose, who was just hired as a full-time faculty member at San Francisco Ballet School, is in the house. But the article that I wrote on the 4 sort of hires, full-time faculty, Black faculty hires for these 4 dance schools, prompted me to write the representation and tokenism article. Now, let me just be clear, because there was some conversation about those articles. One, they were meant to hold hands, right? They were meant to come out at the same time, but the print version got held back. And so the tokenism and representation one got released online. And so for me, it felt like it was out of context, because it didn't, like, it was supposed to be like, these are the 4 hires, and out of that, the question of tokenism versus representation, just for clarity's sake. I stand by both, independent and together. But it is a question, right, that everybody has to ask themselves. And I think that what I think white people need to understand is that particular feeling and weight of every opportunity that you are being given. There's always the question mark of, well, is this because? And that's not to say that you question your actual ability, right? Like, or your skill. I mean, generally, you know you're the bomb. But there's always that thing of like, well, what do I represent to them, or the why? Or even the why now, right? So when you've been knocking forever and trying forever, and then all of a sudden something happens, and all of a sudden the floodgates open, and that is, you talk about emotional labor, right? That's some psychic gymnastics that people have to do, and you should be aware of that. And I often say, you know, I hear this often, oh, you know, we're trying to get people to audition, or we're trying to get Black students to, you know, to come to our school, and they're just not coming. And I say, well, when you've kept people out for a long time, just because you decide that it's time to let them in, doesn't mean that they want to come in. Right? That's real talk. And so there has to be an understanding, right? That's a whole different level of communication. We have to trust you. We want to understand what we mean to you. We know who we are, but what is this here, right? And it's tough, and this is why, again, I'm going to go back to communication. It's really important to be able to have those conversations, right? And for the people that you're bringing in, the Black people that you're bringing in, we should also be able to ask that question. I think we should. You know, like, I'm thrilled to be here, but I have feelings about that. And that's a difficult conversation I'm willing, you know, to have. Jill, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Theresa, and thank you everybody for being here. Firstly, I want to say I love the Constellation Project already. I'm teaching it. I'm out in LA, which is its own La La Land here on the unceded lands of the Chumash and the Tongva. And I'm a dance history professor, ballet history professor. And I just wanted to speak really quickly to so many of the issues. One, the idea of siloing out. And just finished a really big anthology on contemporary ballet. And one of the things that my co-editor and I were trying to do in the book was to figure out some kind of what we have happening here today, some kind of discourse, because the dance community, we're small, but we're separated out. It's like the dancers do the dancer thing. The choreographers, oh, I'm a choreographer. Oh, I'm a teacher. I'm in the ed. Oh, I'm a critic. I'm a scholar. You know, like we have all these like false things going on when in the end everybody's like actually trying to speak together. So one thing we wanted to do in the book was to have different voices. And like I'm just looking through the Zoom pages, so happy. There's like so many connections to all the folks. Like Tommy DeFrance has a chapter, and there's a picture of the Black Ballerinas Breakfast, and Gia Corliss wrote about Mark Morris, and we got a Kadelka chapter, and I personally write about Alonzo King, who's a Black choreographer in San Francisco. We have a chapter on Amy's work. So there's all this discourse happening from choreographers, from critics, from scholars. But what I'm maybe most most proud of, I guess, is the fact that our cover features a male dancer of color. And so that's putting forth what we feel contemporary ballet is now. And of course, the cover was chosen, years ago, but that's what our history is going to show is happening at this moment. We have an epigram by Alonzo, and so just taking voices that have not been, balancing all these things we hear, these kind of hierarchies, and disrupting those, and trying to put that into the academy. Because one thing I'm hearing from a lot of folks today is we're getting these amazing efforts from so many people, but the institutions are so slow moving. And if we can put like a history book out there that says, here's the book on contemporary ballet, and here's a dancer of color on the front, like my hope is that at least that will be some effort towards change in the kind of very slow moving universities that like we have. So kind of like, just going for it and saying, here we are, is hopefully what we can disrupt with that.
Thank you. I mean, what's interesting about, I think maybe even in this town hall, right? What you're talking about is like, there's a lot of diversity in terms of field. It's not just ballet. It's like everybody mixed up in there. What I like about the Constellation Project is in that intersectionality, I think you can see that whether it's because of the marginalization and because Black people had to make their own spaces and make their own way and figure out, there was always that sort of multidisciplinary, multi-genre sort of thing present in the Black body, right? Even if they were Black ballet dancers. Like you think about, Katherine Dunham. She starts off as, a ballet dancer, and then, you see where her career goes. You look at Billy Wilson, who was classically trained, went to Broadway, and then doubles back into ballet, which is really incredible considering that ballet believes that if you can do ballet, then, most ballet dancers do ballet, and then they segue off as their career in ballet wanes, and then they do Broadway or whatever. Well, Black folk been doing that, flipping it like a pancake for decades, right? And I think that is the technology. And that's, for me, when I look at the history, I think it's really important to highlight that. Because a lot of these individuals weren't just dancing solely in one genre. Now, it was because maybe they couldn't, there was an opportunity, but I just think that that's really remarkable. And it actually like flips the whole concept of ballet even at the top of that hierarchy. It flips it on its ear or its head or something like that.
Could I jump in? This conference has one of the first speakers, I came 20 minutes late, was a gentleman who spoke that he was redoing Swan Lake fully with a Black narrative, right? And Jill, you have a book that's kind of completing and filling in the holes of contemporary ballet. And Theresa, you have your Constellation project, which is mapping the influences on institutions and culture and our dance form, how it evolves. So with Cabaret Diversity Network, we aspire to have an article that is going to also tell the stories of the exchange and legacy of American dancers and Black American dancers and dancers of the African diaspora, Afro-Caribbean, Mike, which is big in French, you know, the whole French world and territories, because it's a part in France, because there's a French unified identity that they're aspiring to. Because in Cabaret, Billy Goodson choreographed the last two shows of the Moulin Rouge. Benoit Swan, who was in Cedar Lake and Alvin Ailey, he choreographed the show that Christopher and I are a part of, and he had 9 performers of color casted in that show, which, by the way, is down to 2, which is why we are concerned. So again, I'm inspired to have the dialogue also go into this dance form that we're working with as well, and all of the other connections.
Awesome.
I want to jump in for a moment too, because we are talking about this in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I keep hearing Swan Lake and Giselle come up, but there's also this feminist-driven fantasy that I have for Giselle and Swan Lake of like a 5-minute version of the ballet where an empowered woman says, "I'm not putting up with your BS," and that ends the ballet. Like in 2021, would I have to sit through an hour of this in scene?
You know, here's what's really funny is that I'm building this module called the Bible ballets, right? Like those classical canon where we're like, let's like pull them apart and see. My thing is, what do we value? Like, what is it about these ballets? And a lot of it has to do with like, you know, the score itself, the music is tied to the story in a very particular way. And so I want to say, well, what is it? What can we keep? Like purge, let's Marie Kondo it, right? And see what we're actually left with. I mean, there are people who are like, it is the way that the steps are put together, right? That do a very particular thing. I can believe in that. Okay, so we need to keep that part of it. Like, I just want to play with it to see if we can, like, what is it? We've been holding on to it for so long, not really analyzing it. It could really be anything. Like I'm going to say I'm a Gisellist, right? Like that, like ballet when Giselle was being created was avant-garde and was pushing the envelope, and it was, you know, it was radical. You know, tulle was just created. They were using, you know, textile. Like that's what I would love for ballet to be, instead of like this fading snapshot, right? Where, you know, it's like we're holding it in a very particular way and it's so very precious. I think it's precious too in a way. I think the actual form, the technique, the movement is precious in a way. But like all the trappings might not be. And again, I always say, I don't have a company, I don't have a school, so this is all a theory. Right? Like I'm just throwing it out there. Ron?
Yeah, hi Theresa, how are you?
Hey.
And I just want to say hello to some of my students, Antoine. Very impressed with what you are doing. I just want to say that I want to piggyback on what Leland was saying. I have been very fortunate to have been teaching ballet on white-led organizations as well as Black-led organizations. And I find myself always gravitating back to the Black-led organizations, primarily because they give me more opportunities to do what I need to do. So I'm saying all this to say is that why really, I mean, I understand this love of ballet and I still love it, but you know, you're trying to fix an art form that I think is badly broken, and that we should really spend time with our Black-led organizations. I mean, when I spoke to Reverend Butts about this, he's this wonderful pastor of the Abyssinian church, he gave me the ultimate compliment. He said that I was doing the work. I was doing the work in terms of teaching ballet to Black students. And now I'm actually a faculty member of a wonderful organization I'm a part of. It's called the Black Arts Institute out of the Billie Holiday Theater. And I was the former director of education at Restoration. So I feel that, you know, I feel I'm going back into my community. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., and I'm teaching ballet and Pilates now to Black students who really, really, really want to do it, who appreciate it. So I'm not going to knock myself out, you know, trying to knock down these walls of these white institutions. I've been there and done it. I've been there and done it, and is it worth all the trouble? I don't know. I mean, listening to all of the conversation, but I would rather put my energy, and I'm doing it, into Black-led organizations. This is why I'm still at Ailey after, you know, you can say what you want about Ailey. You know, I think it has one of the best ballet faculty on this planet, ballet and modern. But the issue is, you know, why go through all this? Why go through all of this? I mean, Leland was right. Why, you know, you go through this, you're higher, and you still don't see the changes that you ought to see. So there you go.
Amen, Brother Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brother Hayes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to piggyback and thank both Leland and Ron, because I think that as a person of color going into these white colonial projects is hitting your head against a brick wall. Why aren't we building in our own communities and stop having these white organizations take all of our best, and we have to live by this thing that there's only one best. Someone said earlier, we need more Misty Copelands. We have tons of Misty Copelands, but they're not being recognized. And we keep buying into that. It's time for us to nation build in our communities, because these white colonial projects are not going to change. And this is all over the world. And this part of the conversation makes me very angry.
Bravo.
It really does. It makes me very angry, because we've been doing this the same way forever. And look where we are. And the change is, it's not just slow, it's not happening.
You know, I'm gonna take issue with that part, because when you say it's not happening, then I feel personally my work negated. I think that us being on this call is evidence that something is happening. Is it all happening? No. But what I agree with you. I say yes and. Coming out of like Dance Theater Parliament, I say yes and. But what in my space I don't want is to have this binary thing. It just feels like I get it. I understand it. But when you say that in this space that I have worked to create, it negates my work.
Well, please excuse me.
You know what I'm saying? Like
I'm not here to negate your work.
No. I'm just it's a fact that you feel feelings aren't facts.
Yeah.
I need to express that we are almost at the end, but I hear you and I feel you, and I don't necessarily think that you are 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Right? But if that's the case, then
why are we here?
Why even come?
No, and you know, for a long time, I left myself out of these conversations because I felt that, oh, we're having the same conversation and we're doing the same thing and getting the same results. And I'm here because I don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want to live that way anymore. I want to
We're
be
in the right
present.
space because we're in the right space then because
Yeah.
there's stuff
And I'm going to stay in the space.
right, but
This
there
was
is stuff
consciously
happening. Here's
done.
the thing. And these some of these folks, I'm about to get emotional. I'm spending my life at this.
Yes. I'm crying with you.
No. I am spending my life at this. So there are days when I don't believe. But if that is the case, then I shouldn't be in this work. If that's the case, if I believe that there can't be change, then I should not be in this work. I should not be in these conversations. Because if it is all lost, then yeah, I need to be putting my energy somewhere else.
That's why I'm here.
I'm gonna ask.
And thank you for allowing me to be here.
I'm gonna ask that if you come to this space, that you have to hold the belief. You have to hold the belief that it is possible. That's what I'll ask. You have to hold it. Or don't come in here.
Racism is a bitch. We all know this.
Because people are trying to be in this work authentically, and they are doing it. They're not doing it perfectly, but they are. And if you do not believe that, then that's what I'll say. That's what I'll say. Because most of the people, let me just do a quick stroll. Most of these people I know or have engaged with. That's what this community is about. I don't know what some other communities are about. That's what this one is about. I'm gonna hold that. I'm gonna hold that. And everybody is allowed to have their feelings, and I will respect that. But what I will hold and I'll ask for is that at least for the 2 hours, now 2 or 3, that you hold the possibility. Period. And that's out of my personal respect to me. Because I work 7 days a week, sometimes 16 hours a day. So when you say, why, what's the point? If that's how you feel, then you're gonna have to feel that in another space, because I can't support that. I don't have the bandwidth for it personally. I just don't. I'm sorry.
Theresa, you carry a lot and have for a long time. And the work that you do, the fact that everybody is here is affirmation of that. One of the things that I hear Brother Frenchie talking about is when you look at over the course of anybody's lifetime, there are things, like I said, racism is a bitch, and we have to, everyone has to acknowledge that and understand. Someone said the metaphor to me in a meeting the other day, that it's an iceberg and we're all on the fucking Titanic, and excuse my language. And we only see the tip of that iceberg, the things that we can name. And underneath the waterline, as the Titanic is going down, is the stuff that holds racism up. And so understanding what those systems and what those feelings and what those hierarchies are, that's a whole lot to walk with. And it will crush your spirit. It will crush your ability to get up every day and to do what you believe in. What I rest on is that way back when, some ancestor said, they are not kicking my ass today. No matter what happens in this day, I'm gonna leave something behind for somebody to grab onto to keep moving forward. And that's what I hold on to every day. And I'm grateful for everybody on this call for being present and for doing the work that they are doing, because it's hard work.
I just want to jump in and second what Ms. Burton just said, and to support this space and what is happening, to also acknowledge the difficulties that are experienced in this long haul, but to bring back in this concept of the ancestors and the lineage, and that each person is picking up a certain part that was left by the generation before. And that I think that this work is literally impossible without them, without their spirit waking us up in the morning and saying, you can do it again, without their literature that they've written, Brenda Dixon Godshield, Alifu, all of these incredible people who have put in this work to exhume our ancestors' ghosts and their contributions to all of these art forms, including that of ballet. And this is one of the reasons why I feel so optimistic after having looked at the history that influenced all of Western culture. There is no Western culture without Africa and without all of these other nations. And one of the things that I think to remember, and it's been brought up, is that we're not battling with people per se, but we're battling with ways of thinking and concepts and with way and principles of how people are going through their lives. If everybody sees ballet as this like monolithic thing that we can never change because ballet is itself racist, when ballet is in and of itself a movement science, bringing in Alonzo King. It is a movement science on degree, on architecture, on form, on the balance of orthogonal and foliate movement. There are all these things that go into it that are ideas that come out of Africa and Asia and all of these different things. So ballet is in and of itself a form that is multicultural. Eurocentricity is a misnomer in relation to whiteness. Eurocentric isn't even white. And so one of this information that we're all working towards in saying there's something not right about this. There's something that even as we're performing and doing these roles, like there's a reason why we love it and why it is generative and why when we see it, we say yes. Why we hear it and we say yes and, you know, these constructions. The established canon of Swan Lake and Giselle, those are put on with white stories, but the human situation of somebody having a heartbreak, we all know that. And that is what we're identifying with. And I think all of these, you know, the costumes, it having to be this, you having to put on blackface, you having to have a certain kind of palace, all that stuff is extra to the human experience. And so that's why I believe that, yes, we do need to reevaluate these institutions. Yes, we do need to be there, but we also do need to be creating our own. We also do need to be doing our own thing on the outside because they need a model to look to. They need a model to say, oh, yes, they did it already. So it's really not that big of a deal. We don't have to think the way we're thinking because here's something that we see that's working. And so I just wanted to jump in and contribute that, and also to lift you up, Theresa, because I know you've been doing this for forever. I was one of the kids in the Ailey program back when I was in middle school, just sitting around. You didn't even know who I was. I was in your apartment and you just talking to all of us, just sharing all your stories. And so it's just like, come on, baby, let's just talk. And so I don't even know if you remember that, but it's one of those things where I know, and my parents are in grassroots community things. So I know the kind of labor that goes into this day in and day out, day in and day out. And so just to lift up this space, and also Frenchie Haynes, just to lift you up, because that's also coming from pain. That's coming from the frustration of just not seeing it. And so all of this, we're all trying to deal with it together, but I'm just so glad that we can be here so that we can put in the actionable things. Hearing all of these action items that are coming in these various spaces is really inspiring.
Amen. Mike?
I'm going off of anecdotal information here, but follow me. You know, we talk about after the fall of the Roman Empire, how Europe went into a medieval times, dark ages, a loss of knowledge, and an over-reliance on religiosity, right? I feel like something similar happened after Dance Theater of Harlem took a hiatus in terms of the recruiting and the pipelines that were developed for Black dancers in ballet. And it is my personal opinion that the tide started to turn when Theresa Ruth Howard and Denise Saunders Thompson over at IABB started to call this out, started the auditions, started to highlight this, and other people joined them. But we started to see Michaela DePrince. We started to see Precious Adams. We started to see a reemergence of Blacks in ballet. And the truth is, we never went anywhere, right? But it felt like after DTH took the hiatus that there was this like medieval times for Blacks in ballet. And the reversal of which I feel comfortable enough saying I can in part attribute to the work of Theresa. Comfortably.
Well, I will say that
Yeah.
the hiatus that you're talking about, it really is a science, because the representation that Dance Theater of Harlem was around the world, right? And it's sort of like a mecca, right, for Black ballet dancers. Now, true, Dance Theater of Harlem did not diversify ballet. It became a catch-all, right? But the idea that there was something that you could look at and see a possibility. And so we had this plethora of Black ballet students, people training to high levels. A lot of them, you know, if they didn't dance for Dance Theater of Harlem, many of them did not dance in other companies. Some went to Europe, some went to different genres.
Right.
But that, what was it? Was it like 7-9 years? That is actually a generation of a dancer. So you had the dancers who were in the company that most of them went to Ailey or Broadway, and some of them stayed in ballet. And then you had this void where Black people didn't see themselves, like there wasn't that representation that says, oh, little brown girl, you should be doing that. And so that is, it like wizened. And,
right.
and that is what you're speaking of.
But I also remember that the tea on the ground, I'm not saying this is the reality, but the tea on the ground was that you could go to Oakland Ballet or DTH, do your 2 years, and then start auditioning elsewhere. So I know that some people didn't go on to dance elsewhere, but for a lot of people who did, it became sort of like a professional bookmark on their CV that would allow them to do other things. Was that all in ballet? Maybe, maybe not, but I appreciate what it did do. But for the void that it created, I think the people who came to the table, yourself included, activated a larger conversation that existed beyond, that needed to happen beyond DTH. that if we're going to tackle this for whatever the next iteration is, thank God DTH is back, let's get bigger, let's get bolder. And I think I've seen the manifestation, like the direct manifestation of that advocacy. So I understand that that might be a drop in the bucket, but I celebrate it for what it is today and right now.
Speaking of right now, y'all, 15 minutes past, well, that's Baptist church for you, right? You be like, woo, when is that benediction? Look, this in my mind is a space for us to find each other, to be with each other, to have real conversation, and that's fine. Oh my God, I'm emotional. Thank you.
Go ahead.
For showing up again. I don't feel alone anymore.
Good.
Right?
Keep up the good work.
Oh, look at me, I'm a mess. I am a crier. But you guys are beautiful. I thank you for your work. I support your work. I am here for you as a resource, and will lift you up. So with that, benediction, amen. And please, go have, like Alicia said, please have some joy in the day.
Bye-bye.
But I'm gonna stay while you leave if you want to, I'm a mess now. Stop the recording.